All right, I'm calling to order the June 20, all right, let's have some order here. Calling to order the June 22nd Board of Selectmen meeting, 2015. We're going to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Tonight we have representatives from the North Andover Booster Club softball program to lead us in the pledge. They don't seem like they're here right now, but give them a few minutes, seconds, and they'll be here. So if we could all stand.
Should we clap for them?
Oh, yeah.
After, right?
Yeah. Girls, come on in.
Welcome.
Get the flag. You want to face the flag this way? Come on in. Come on in. Right through.
You're following. Come on, Kiki. We want you up front there. I want to be up front. Come on. Get in there, girl. Little ones up front.
Thank you.
Big smiles.
All right, can we start off? Everybody ready?
Chuck?
Who's going to start it?
You can go.
Okay, one of the older girls will start it. Ready? Great job, girls.
Who's got the ball? Who's got the ball?
Scooch in, girls, so I can get a picture of all of you.
Just to quickly state, on behalf of the Booster Club, I'm here tonight because the softball commissioners, you can hand them right to that gentleman right there. Softball commissioners Chris Murphy and Dave Brown could not be here. So on behalf of the Booster Club, this is a big thank you to the town, especially the Community Preservation Fund town manager. The Booster Club, extends its appreciation for giving us a complex like McAvoy. We're looking forward to getting out there, and I know these girls are excited to play in a place like that where it's it's really a nice facility. So on behalf of the Boosters again, and some of the past presidents, Tom Holland and Terry Holland, thank you.
And it was really the Booster Club that really put all the wheels in motion for that. And Terry and one of the other past presidents in the room here, Mr. McCarthy back there, is also here and was part of that too. So great job.
Just working with other sports in town, soccer and stuff too. Really, everything just came. It's really good to come together.
Wrong side's gone.
And if you haven't been to see the facility yet, it's got 3 softball fields on there now. It's got a walking track. It's got a basketball hoop. It's got a hut now for men's and ladies' rooms, and it's got a nice brand new swing set and playground. So really nice facility, and I hope you girls all enjoy it. And
under 200 pounds, so I
it's got a big picture of Dawn with a red line through it on there. Well,
Yes.
yeah. Well, thank you all for coming in tonight and leading the Pledge of Allegiance. That was really
Two of
great.
my favorite girls in the room.
You want to turn around and face
You want to shift right in front of us. Bigger ones behind. You face that way, yeah. Little ones in front, big girls in the back. Oh, I'm going to get a better picture.
Being a father of all girls,
It's awesome.
former softball board member.
It's a great thing for them.
It's good.
Yeah.
You get the last names. It's good. Here we go.
They want the Selectmen to stand, but I don't think the mothers can stand.
Do you guys want to stand real quick?
Maybe you can stand. I can stand on the chairs.
Hi,
Oh,
Abby.
Rosemary, why don't you-
Oh, hold the ball up.
Oh,
There you go, Nick.
You can see the ball.
oh, it's upside down.
You tell him, Valentino.
All right, well, thank you, girls.
Thank you, girls.
And good luck. Have a nice summer.
Can't wait to hang with you in a couple of weeks. We're gonna make it fun. Bye, Kiki love. Bye, honey. Thank you, girls. Two of my most favorite girls.
From Thompson?
Kiki Valentino and Katie Albert.
Okay. Of Wabi and,
Yeah, I mean,
There's no swearing, they're just going to
okay. Okay, so as we clear the room here, get that door shut. Okay, so next on the agenda, I'm going to ask for approval of the minutes from June 1st and June 9th. A motion?
Mr. Chair, I move approval of June 1st, 2015 open session minutes as written.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
aye.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the minutes for June 9th, 2015 open session minutes as written.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Everything's good? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Communications and announcements. First on the list, we have the great privilege of introducing two newly appointed staff members on the North Andover Fire Department. Chief, I'll turn it over to you. You can introduce these two young men.
Thank you. As all of you probably are aware, we in the fire department have been without a deputy chief for several years now, for a variety of reasons. Finally, after an exhaustive search and some testing, and we now have a candidate who has risen to the top. But before I introduce him, I'd like to thank the Finance Committee, the Board of Selectmen, and Mr. Mailer for his hard work in this whole process. The candidate that was chosen is no secret to any of you. I'd ask him now to come up. His name is Bill McCarthy. Bill?
So I guess I have to say something then. Well, I just want to thank the chief, the town. It's a very important position. I look forward to a new part of my career. It's a great bunch of people that I work with. I look forward to working with all of them in the town and continuing and bringing the fire department into the future. And I'm very happy and I appreciate it. So thank you very much.
You may want to make note, that's probably the shortest speech Bill has given. Next, as a result of Bill's promotion to deputy chief, we will now have a promotion of an individual who has been serving as acting lieutenant. That individual is Jeff Judge, and I will now ask Jeff to come to the podium. Jeff?
I just want to say thank you to the chief and to the other department members for supporting me and giving me the opportunity, and I look forward to moving into a new position. Thank you.
Congratulations.
I'd like to thank you all again, and just to mention that this was not the actual swearing in with all the regalia. That'll come at a future date, not too far down the road.
We want the regalia.
Thank you again.
We'll give you guys an opportunity to depart if you'd like.
Yeah.
Where's the food?
Yeah, cake too. We want regalia.
I was
cake.
wondering, doesn't it get a nice gold badge?
See you, Bill. See you, Sean.
at least one stay in the hospital. Well, what time's the last 4 years?
Filter out. Okay, so next on the agenda, continuing under communications and announcements, we have the Standard & Poor's bond rating change for North Andover. Mr. Manager?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I had communicated to the Finance Committee, School Committee, the Board of Selectmen, recent comments made by Standard & Poor's as they conducted the review that they traditionally do on an annual basis as we move forward into the market to borrow funds to cover our capital project. It was significant in that Standard & Poor's recognized the efforts, really the coordinated efforts of the group of individuals identify the various committees, the strong strides we've made, the significant strides we've made over the last couple of years to create a sustainable government to make sure that we can really move forward with a high level of services and make sure that we can proceed with those services as time goes on. Specifically, Standard & Poor's recently completed the bond rating review, specifically noting that they revised the outlook of the underlying rating of the bonds from stable to positive. We're a AA plus rated community. The next step for us, the sort of ultimate step for any community, is AAA rating. In order to make AAA rating, you really have to move from stable to positive, which we did. They recognized that our underlying fundamentals were those of a AAA community, but they felt like we had just begun down this road and wanted a couple more years of proof that we plan on staying the course, that the commitment that we have made as a community with both individuals and as a community to become sustainable and to provide the stewardship that our residents expect is something that will go on into the future. I fully expect from the signals that they are sending, if we're able to maintain the good, solid financial fundamentals that we have over the last couple of years, building reserves, balancing budgets, that we are within a reasonable arm's length of becoming a AAA community, which will be the first time that North Andover has been AAA from a bond rating perspective in its history. So I thank everybody for really the spirit of cooperation and partnership that has led us to this point, and hopefully a year or two from now, we'll be recognizing the fact that Standard & Poor's sees us as a AAA community.
That is certainly great news, and congratulations to you and your staff, and again, for all the collaboration between all the boards and the committees that have to work together to get to that point. I mean, from the Board of Selectmen, the school committee, the finance committee, and everyone in between. So it's a great show of effort and really great positive results.
It is. It's fantastic. And I'd like to just add to the list the citizens of North Andover who took the votes at town meeting to support all these moves and decisions that the town manager and other committees have clearly laid out. It's really, you know, for someone who's been on the finance committee and on this board, this is huge. So fingers crossed that we hit it. And
positive direction. Any other comments? Great. Thank you. Next up, under communications and announcements, we have some updates on the national grid rebates that we've been experiencing from the ESCO project. Come on up and introduce yourself. And
hello, everybody. I'm Joe Morocco. I'm with Community and Customer Management at National Grid. I'm here today, along with my colleagues Dave Gendel, Chris Wellington, and Mike Manides, to present a check that actually represents the total value of rebates the town of North Andover has received from National Grid for a multitude of energy efficiency products that have spanned across multiple buildings in the town. National Grid takes great pride in these programs, but without the foresight of our local leaders to see the value in them, they'd be for naught. So I'd like to thank specifically Town Manager Andrew Mailer, Assistant Town Manager Ray Santilli, and Facilities Director Stephen Foster for both their effort and their leadership throughout this entire process. I couldn't be happier to be here today to present this check for $245,000 to the town of North Andover from National Grid. Can we get a sixer?
So
Yes.
I think what's important to identify from the project was the ESCO project, which certainly took a great deal of effort of communication with various stakeholders, was very important to the town, and one of the more significant items was the fact that as a function of the energy improvements that we implemented in 13 different buildings, public buildings, we not only are saving enough energy to cover the cost associated with implementing more than $3.5 million worth of capital improvements, but also received rebates in excess, in this rebate alone, of these rebates, more than $250,000, but in total close to $500,000 in rebates helping fund the project to make sure that not only have we seen improvements, we've seen a reduction in energy costs, and for the foreseeable future, we'll reap the benefits in our individual buildings from this kind of program. So we appreciate the partnership with National Grid very much. Yeah.
you should really come up here and just check it, right? Yeah, come up here. So you guys did a lot of work around this. I'm sorry, sir. We'll recognize public comment in a moment if you don't mind.
Okay, take that check on location with you.
do you need someone? Did you want to be in the picture?
No, it's okay. These are the key players right here. All right, guys, looks great. Let me just take one more piece, different angle. All right, I'll email that over to you. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, if I could
Thank
take just 1 second to note the work that we don't always get to put a face with a name, but Mr. Gendel is the person that when we're stuck, when we're in a really difficult spot, a lot of times in the middle of crises, meaning winter snow conditions, down-powered lines, just really difficult circumstances. I think about the loss of power we had a couple of years ago that was affecting a number of the nursing homes and their sustainability in the long term without power. Dave's always on the other side of the phone. He responds regardless of the time and responds in a way that is never, is always looking toward a way to solve the problem. So we very much appreciate the relationship, the fact you're there. We certainly know things are tough sometimes. We're not happy with everything National Grid does. But as it relates to the most difficult times when we're in crisis, we appreciate the fact that you answer the phone. Yeah.
Thank you for coming in tonight.
Thank you very much.
So I saw you had your hand up. We have a section for public comment later. Is it something that...
I have a real big concern. Our electric bills have gone through the roof.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you to hold that for public comment then.
Well, the public comment is really related back to the check that they gave us. Who's paying for that check? I, as a homeowner, feel like my electric bills have gone through the roof, and I've had to go off and buy power supply from another source, but I've still seen my electric bills go. So these guys are coming out and handing you a nice big fat check. Who's paying for that? They hit the button again, and my electric bill goes up another 50 cents, another $5. So this looks terrific and wonderful, but at the end of the day, I as a homeowner in this town are paying more for my electric bill. And I really have an issue with them coming and offering you that check. Have you passed anything on to us in our tax abatements or any other kind of abatements? No, they just keep, they're giving you money, and I want to know who's paying for this.
Well, actually, we have seen some budget items based on savings in energy that we've had across the school system. In particular, this past year, we've seen savings in the school systems based on energy bills, so we've been able to maintain some budget numbers there. So, I mean, we're trying to work what we can do, but I appreciate your comments, and thank you for making them, and we are going to continue, though, if you want to stay for public comment for later, but I...
More comments for the electric work that's going to be...
Okay, I'm going to ask you to hold those, okay? We'll give you an opportunity during public comment later on. Okay. Okay, next up, we are going to review the internal town hall designs. So we have representatives from Chris Logan, Donham, and Sweeney Architects.
So based on the discussions from our last meeting, we asked Chris Logan and staff from Dunham and Sweeney, our owner's project rep is here as well, to provide a better visual perspective relative to the internal layout of the proposed improvements to Town Hall. One is just sort of a footprint from a two-dimensional sense of the different floor layouts, but also a couple of, I guess, quasi-three-dimensional views in terms of the perspective of what happens when you walk into the new center of the building, which is something that was of particular importance to the board. So you want me to roll these in? Sure. Okay. I wasn't sure who was... Oh, I wasn't sure you were going to do Jeff.
Walk you through the plans when they're up here. But in brief summary, we wanted to, the concept behind the new work and the fire station renovation would be to take the existing details, materials, colors, and replicate those in the fire station sides, because the whole of this building is seen as one unified town hall. We didn't want it to feel like two separate buildings or a later renovation that didn't quite match up. So to the best of our abilities, we're going to be trying to replicate those details so that both sides are uniform. In fact, we do have, as Chris will explain, some work to do in the existing town hall as well, which will help to unify that as well. In the new entry lobby and the courtyard, which currently are in part outside the current building, we're going to be making interior spaces. We're going to be attempting to retain as much of the historical context of those spaces as possible. Those have rich brick detailing, especially in the courtyard. And we're going to try to leave all those details showing through to the interior, so that you will end up getting a building that I think is unified, as well as recognizing its historical impact and import. So I'll let Chris walk you through the building so you get an idea of the layout.
Thank you, Jeff.
This is the lower floor of the existing town hall on your, I guess it'd be on your left, and then fire station on your right.
They're seeing it the same way.
Looking the same way we are. Okay, so fire station on your left and town hall on your right. We're not really making any changes to the existing town hall. We are reconfiguring some of the offices that are going into those spaces. And on the left-hand side of the building, the fire station, most of those will be storage spaces. And we are adding a new toilet and shower room, which will be used primarily for Conservation Commission when they come in from doing their field work, and adding a new boiler plant, which will be the boiler plant for the entire building. So part of our mission for this building is to add all new systems with one boiler plant that'll run the entire building from this point forward, which is the big change from what you presently have. The accessible entry remains the same. The outside of the building from the parking lot remains exactly the same. And the finishes on the public rooms in the lower level will be exactly the way you now see them.
So, may I ask, so you will be using part of the basement of the existing fire station? You will be expanding into that? I've been in there.
Yes.
It's a basement.
It is. We are.
It is a
yeah.
real.
So we'd be replacing the floor completely.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, the one thing we can't do much about is the headroom. So,
Right,
you know, we're trying to work with what we have, so that's why all the spaces down there are realistically storage spaces.
Okay.
They're not going to be occupied space.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of the pipe
Makes
work
sense.
that you see in the ceiling will be going away because we don't need all those drains that once fed the apparatus space. So we'll have a little more room within those spaces to make them into viable storage for the town offices.
Will you be treating it in any way so that there won't be dampness? Are you doing any kind of drainage, interior or exterior, or whatever, or are you just doing it through air systems, or?
There is a ventilation system going into the building, but we will be pouring a new concrete slab on the fire station side. Part of that will be a vapor barrier, which will prevent moisture from coming
Okay.
up from the ground
Sounds
into
good.
the,
All right.
yeah. And there'll be some heat down there as well, so it'll help dry things out. The next slide is the main entrance, the main floor of Town Hall. Top of the screen is Main Street, and as you saw in the earlier presentation, the entrance to Town Hall will be in the center of the building. And so at the top of the page, there's a new entry vestibule. We'll bring you right into the lobby, and you look into the atrium, which was the old courtyard. And as Jeff described, we're retaining almost all of the original brick detailing in those spaces, so you will have exposed brick. We'll be using the colors and the natural wood that you have in the existing town hall in those spaces, as well as accents.
So pretty much the same color, the green and the brick, and then you're going to have the wainscoting that will be. It's actually like beadboard almost.
Yeah, the beadboard. In the public spaces, meaning the corridors, you will have the beadboard where it presently exists. In the new conference rooms, we'll have a wainscoting, same as we have in this room. Wainscoting just being that bead of wood that goes around
Right.
the chair rail.
Chair rail is
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
So you'll be doing chair rail or wainscoting? Or both?
Chair rail in the meeting room, wainscoting and chair rail in the public corridors. And
Which keeps it from getting beat up.
Yeah, it's
Exactly.
pretty much
Okay.
what you
Yeah.
see
Sounds
here
good.
is just
Yeah.
getting replicated. And you might want to finish off the floor plan
Yeah, so,
report, Andrew.
yeah.
Just because I found it helpful to me, and it's come up with, I thought the most driving questions as it relates to this communication effort on the board was perspective, which for people who see things in two-dimension.
Sure.
You can flip to
So
those.
what I'd like to do is show the
So,
perspectives.
right,
It's,
these now, understand that these are all part of our working design drawings. We use this technique to really study how all the building elements go together. We find it very useful.
Tell us where we are right there.
You are standing right inside the lobby with your back to the vestibule, which is off of Main Street. And you're looking into the clerk taxpayers counter to your left,
On the
up a
left.
couple risers. You have to remember the town hall floor is a couple feet above the fire station floor. They're not the same elevation. So the old fire station entrance was 2 feet below the town hall entrance. That's why inside town hall you go up a number of steps in the vestibule.
So the front entrance will be handicap accessible, where today we do not have an accessible front entrance.
We are fully accessible. All areas within the building are fully accessible.
So the front, so what you're looking at is at grade where the gentleman and his son are? Is that grade? I think that's, I'm making a guess.
Yeah.
That's at grade?
Yeah.
And then what you'll see from a different perspective is if you happen to be in a wheelchair, you could go to what is the right of this and travel back to the elevator.
I get it. Okay.
So that would be the next,
Go slightly into the fire station side.
correct.
To the elevator, up the couple of feet to that level, and then you can access the remainder of that level.
It should be noted from a customer service perspective that both
Now I get it.
the clerks and tax collectors' offices will have more square footage and more counter space.
I'm glad you said that, because when I was looking at the design,
It's tough to look at
it
that.
looked as though we were going to lose some, so that's very good news.
We measured it all out
Okay.
to
So
confirm
just
that.
to,
They're larger and they're also facing the lobby. So right now, as you come into the building, you have to turn the corner to get to the clerks. Now you come into the building and the clerks is looking onto the lobby. So
if I can go to the next
Yeah.
perspective, this is as if you came into the front of the building is where this gentleman with the backpack is exiting. And now you're looking at the inspectional services
On the other side.
other side, at grade.
And that's a public corridor. You can't tell too well from this rendering, but the face of that public counter is identical wainscoting and chair rail than what you have in the old town hall.
You look like you have tile there. Of course, we have cork right now.
Right now, we're showing a pattern,
Okay.
which is the same pattern that you have in your corridors right now. And when you get into the counter for community development, that is essentially the same flooring that we would have in the corridors. We are working through the issues with the cork flooring. It does require maintenance, significant amount of maintenance every year, and we want to make sure that whatever flooring product is picked can stand up to a long-term use. So right now, that there hasn't been a selection in terms of the exact material,
Okay.
but it is a pattern that we're
We
showing.
will have a pattern
When you're
tile
saying
floor.
a pattern, are you talking about like a border around the edge or an actual pattern
I
in the?
think, to be honest with you, just because I don't want to get too far askew, that level decision hasn't been made yet. This is showing a
Well, I'm
pattern.
interested in hearing your ideas.
I understand, but I want to clarify two things that they haven't said. One is it's expected to be a hard surface. At this point, you've communicated a stone or hard surface, not a likely tile surface, just to be clear about the conversation. Because the concern is you couldn't have this type of flooring in the main trafficked area. That's what you've
Yeah.
communicated,
Right. Yeah.
correct?
Cork does
So
not
although we're
hold up.
showing a pattern, it's not necessarily a
You're showing this is a floor, but we don't know what it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, it could be stone,
I
it
just
could
don't
be
want to, I don't want to create the wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, we're trying to be really cognizant of durability
And then
and
also
aesthetics.
safety, because you can't have a material that's slippery either.
Right,
Right.
and so if you use like a stone tile, it would have a texture to it that
Yeah.
would be less slip resistant, or more slip resistant.
There
Okay.
you go, third.
This last view is standing in the courtyard, looking back towards the lobby, out to Main Street. So you can see the old arched brick openings that exist there now. They're now covered up on the fire station side. Those would be looking into those open up into the vestibule. Beyond that, we have the new entrance, which has the same pediment detailing that the existing entrance had. And then on the upper level, you have this beautiful brickwork with the windows and the arches, and those are open to either offices on either side or with windows in them, interior windows, but on the Main Street side, they're open to a corridor beyond. So it becomes a very transparent space.
Open, and you talked about light-filled, which
Right.
we did have at the Brad Street, so I'm really excited that it's sort of being replicated, sort of, in this building, which is great.
I'm sorry, I'm going to fill back now. I just
Okay.
thought the perspectives would be
Sure,
helpful.
no, that is really helpful. All right,
Now, with the
what-
perspectives, we'll jump back to the first
Okay,
floor.
so we're back on the first floor. We've talked about the entry vestibule lobby, the atrium, which is the old courtyard. On the right-hand side, we have the reconfiguration of a few of the town offices. So what we're doing is we're bringing the the public corridors, the ones that have the beautiful woodwork, up against the courtyard wall. So you begin to be able to have a relationship between the courtyard and the public space. You can start to see through to all the offices. And now all the offices have all window walls. So you have a lot more natural light coming into the offices than you did before. Right-hand side are all the same functions that are presently on the first floor of Town Hall. The lower portion of the plan, which has the mailroom, the copy, the conference room, the bathrooms, the accounting is all the same. And on the left-hand side, where the firefighters, where the apparatus bay used to be, is now community development. And that's more of an open plan space because all those offices really work together as one. When you're reviewing building plans or zoning issues, all of those different departments sort of weigh in. So they wanted to have more of a relationship and be able to hear what the applicants are talking about in case they need to come out and lend some information.
Not in this one.
No,
Okay.
on the roof.
Just thought I'd ask.
I think two notable features. One is that currently when you walk in this building, although it's a very beautiful building, for people who are coming in the first time, you don't quite know how to get to the second floor. It's an interior staircase. There's no significance to it.
Presently, you're saying.
Presently.
Yeah,
So the
yeah.
interior staircase, which is to the far right for us of this, becomes a true interior staircase,
Right.
where the main grand staircase, which is in
We're
here,
adding a new staircase in the atrium, which is open.
and two, for those historical buffs, this little box right here that's focused
Behind.
right next to where it's at the W and woman, that I believe is going to be the new home of the vault.
Yes, so the vault now,
The safe.
the safe.
The safe, the
Thank
clerk's
you.
safe.
Yeah, the safe is now in the public corridor next to
We
a
promised a
display
special
case.
lady down in the clerk's office, we're going to find, because for those at home, it was a safe that was been in some of the original buildings. It's pretty beat up, but the interior, there's some wonderful paintings and, how they scrolled and made safes pretty, so that's great. That's great.
So can I ask you, can we just stay on the historical perspective? What's going to happen with the pole?
I was waiting for that. I'd like the pole to stay. Can we make it stay?
You're going to have Dawn going
let's go
down
to the
that pole every day.
That's the side where the strip club's gonna be.
We need to figure out on the second floor whose office gets the fire poles, which might be part of the problem.
It's close.
But we can save that pole at least and like put it in a corner or something? Is that what you're saying?
I'm with
Or really leave the pole so people, you really want to leave the pole?
I don't know about leaving it, but I just want to know what's going to happen to it because it's historic.
We will make sure
No?
it goes to someone that, I don't know what the vintage of the actual
Were you
pole
going
is.
to say who could use it?
I'm not sure I want to say anything at this
No, I
point.
don't
We will be,
So there's no place for it in the new station, is what you're saying? We didn't make a place
Do
for
they
it
have
in
a
the
pole
new
at the
station.
news station?
we'll give it to Andy and he can. He don't? No, they went the way of disability claims.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
This is second floor.
Second floor, again, the town hall side remains pretty much the same. The lower portion, the upper portion, we've reconfigured the town manager's office area and the selectman's office area. Now they have all windows with the interior corridor that connects over to the fire station side. Fire station side has more enclosed offices than what you saw downstairs because of the nature of those rooms. And all of the rooms around the atrium open up to the atrium, and then you can see the continuation of the grand stair from the atrium, and it brings you right up to the second floor elevator lobby, which is a great way now to get to this meeting room. So if you have a meeting in this room in the evening, you come into the new town hall lobby, into the grand atrium space, up the staircase, and you're immediately adjacent to the meeting room, which I think would be a really nice progression of spaces and sort of call attention to it.
So these spaces around the center where it says atrium, where they are not connected to an interior office, will be open.
Right.
So where the word corridor is between assistant town manager and atrium, where that's on a corridor, those windows will be removed, but all of the infrastructure will remain. So you'll be able to look down into the space.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, we're retaining all the old brick openings and the detailing that's there, so you'll look through the old brick window into the
It's going to be really nice.
space. Yeah.
We're contemplating a portico for Ray, so he can walk out to the front of the building,
I saw, that's
look down onto the masses.
I know what you were looking at, Rosemary.
Like the Pope.
But you knew that I saw it.
I had him take out the picture of the little chair with the little umbrella, though. I didn't think that was appropriate.
No.
I thought it was to stack with the white smoke.
I mean, new
That's
Pope.
great.
I can climb out the window.
It should be noted some of the things that we are somewhat deficient on today. From a human resource perspective, we do really great things, but we don't have that kind of privacy. If an employee comes up today, they're coming into a space that has multi-uses. We quasi-secure, we secure sufficiently enough, but not to the level we should, certain records. So in this case, we provide the private storage, a place to meet with employees, rather than coming into a conference room if there happens to be a confidential issue. Same thing as our, people who present prospective businesses. Community development has a space where they can meet with folks. And currently, because there wasn't another spot, our what we call break room or lunchroom is on the first floor in a main corridor of the building. It has now moved up to the second floor, where I think more employees will use it because it's not in the main corridor of the building. So when you're coming into a main town hall, instead of, again, trying to find that interior staircase and passing the lunchroom, you're now making it more of a grand entrance to a town hall.
And Board of Health, their space is somewhat private, too, because...
Yes.
Okay. Health Department, excuse me, Health Department.
It's on the first floor. So all of the inspectional services departments will work like they work today. They absolutely work in, that space actually for the nurse puts her in close proximity to the examination space built into the senior center.
Okay.
So when the senior center was built, it has into it a place used on occasion for the purpose of dealing with seniors. The most, what's changed in terms of public health nursing is that their most often interaction now is not with school-age populations as it was 50 years ago. It's with the elderly. So placing the public health nurse closest to the senior center means we're bringing the service provider closest to those people being served.
And closer to the handicap accessibility of the back.
Exactly. And if you notice on the second floor as well, is what we're noticing is we don't have also a private space. If a veteran comes in and needs to speak with the veterans director, under this arrangement, someone can come into a reception area, meet behind a closed door with the veterans director, but also have sort of an area where they can wait to see that. Currently, we put a table in a hallway. Looks a little bit like a bistro table because we don't really have a choice. So this addresses that issue as well.
That's great.
I think that's the overview.
It's great.
No, it's... No, it's...
Bravo.
Four conference rooms. Public will have access to all four.
Another question, too, is in some of our public spaces, we have that faux tin ceiling look. Are we going to do something similar to that?
We are repeating that same ceiling in
The exact same one?
Yes.
So, and getting lots of extra boxes.
But it's going to be, they make that ceiling still. So
They still do, that's great.
We'll be using, we have to, because of the mechanical changes in the building, there will be some reconfiguration in the existing corridors in Town Hall, but we will be having a pressed ceiling in the corridors like we
No, that's
have here.
terrific.
Yeah. And you'll have the crown molding as well around those spaces too. We're not adding crown molding up against brick because it really doesn't.
Just like
It does, yeah.
Yeah, like you wouldn't have crown molding on this brick, but
Right,
you have it
it would look silly.
on the plaster walls.
To give credit to the architects, who, by the way, have a fantastic track record of historical renovations and expansion projects throughout the Commonwealth, they've gone back to the '04 specifications and literally identified the exact products so that doors will be the same and or similar, because of course it's not from the, but they've done a fantastic job of making sure that what you heard the other day, what you guys recommended certainly a couple of weeks ago, that what will appear on the other side and the work that gets done on this side will replicate the work that was done in '04. And they're very sensitive to that, and their recommendations on a regular basis have been very cognizant of our desire to want that to be the case.
It's fantastic. It really, it's actually the open concept of the interior spaces is better than I even thought it was going to look like. I really, no, I love the open stairs. I love just it's very exciting, so really can't wait to see it. And I'm really pleased about the harmony of colors, and I mean, all of that is really important. I mean, this is the people's building, and we have to look professional. And when we're asking people to come in and invest in our community, we really have to look like we've got our act together, and nothing says it more than our public building. You know, that we know what we're doing, it's gracious, it's welcoming, and what we hope to continue is the theme of, and come in and learn a little bit about our history and our past through our paintings and our beautiful scenes around town. So it's terrific. Thank you so much for inviting them back in, Mr. Manager, and thank you so much for coming back. I know we've keep having you come, but that really looks fantastic.
And great work on the fire station.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that opening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, other communications and announcements? Oops, sorry. We're going to have public comment. It's on the agenda, so if you wouldn't mind, we're holding off on public comment for that. We have a pretty full agenda tonight. Is it something that you wanted to address to them?
Yes. So you didn't talk anything about the exterior?
We covered that last month, last meeting. We talked about the exterior.
Specific, like the clock, is that staying? It is staying.
Stay.
The clock's staying.
I work there.
Oh.
Yeah, it is. It's on the site plan and it's retained in the closet design.
Okay, so we could have answered that question. We didn't need them. So appreciate that, though.
And they're leaving the safe with all the money in it so that we get the AAA.
I like it.
The AAA.
Thank you for coming in. We're going to continue with our agenda now, but thank you. Okay, any other communications or announcements? Any other communications or announcements? We have the 4th of July coming up. We have the events on the Common this year. I believe it's on July 3rd and July 4th.
Yes.
For the events on the Common, and the fireworks are going to be July 3rd.
Yes.
At the middle school. Also, I believe they're still taking registrations for the road race that has been reinstated in town this is the 3rd year now that the Borderline Running Club is running the road race, or when I say running, I mean managing the road race. They'll also be running it, but they're managing it. It's really a really nice event, whether you just want to come out and watch the runners, or even, or run in it, or even volunteer to help out with the race. But, so a lot of good things coming up on the next couple of weeks.
I just want to wish all the kids a fantastic summer. Last day of school is tomorrow. So remember, they'll be out and about and all over town, so keep your eyes peeled for them, and I hope they all have a fantastic summer.
Go to Stevie's Pond.
I was
And
gonna
hit
say,
Stevie's Pond.
as of today, Stevens
And
Pond is
Stevie's
open.
Pond is open,
Wow,
right? Yeah.
that's awesome. And all the shows.
going on right now?
Oh, I think it
Tonight.
may be,
Tonight, yeah.
tonight.
Tonight. Just tonight.
It's a circus here.
It is just tonight.
Just tonight, huh?
You missed what Don said.
I heard
I
it.
heard them too.
Okay, it was
Let that one
Sometimes we
fly off.
selectively listen.
Yeah.
Moved right past it. That was
Any other communications or announcements?
I've been around them longer
No,
than the rest
that's
of
right.
you.
Did a really effective job.
We're good?
Very impressive.
Okay, let's move on to consent items then. First on the agenda for consent is the North Andover Country Club is requesting to create an additional crosswalk on Great Pond Road. So last meeting they came in, asked to repaint the 3 existing crosswalks that they had, but they also want to add an additional crosswalk on Great Pond Road to go from, I believe, their practice facility across the street to the clubhouse. They went through and got approval from both the police and Public Works. Is there anybody here to speak to this tonight?
I think it was that we just wanted to give the public notice.
I don't see anybody here. For or against?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Well, while we're on crosswalks, should we send a letter to Andover, tell them how to do it? I see.
Oh, that brick, well, yeah.
Yeah, we should offer our services on how to do the crosswalks. They don't understand over there. They aren't too bright.
Oh, duly noted.
Duly noted.
do it.
Ambassadors, do it.
Let's keep moving on now. Thank you, Don, for that comment. Okay, Susan Park requests permission for use of the town common for a group fitness boot camp class on Saturday, July 25th. I believe we had something like this last year, right? Come on.
I don't know, it wasn't me.
Oh, was it you?
Sue.
Come on up.
Gee, you should have kept quiet, it went so well.
Yeah, I did it last year, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I would love use to, I could either do a boot camp class or I could do Pilates, just for a 1-hour class, maybe about 15 people or so.
For the one day.
For one day, yeah. My one question was, if I wake up on the 25th and it's pouring, am I allowed like a rain date? I'm not
We can do that, can't we?
Well, we can build it in right now.
We can build it into the, yeah, we can do
Yeah, and
that.
as long as it's not already requested by somebody else on that day, which we don't have any others.
Like the following Saturday or something. I
Nothing's
mean,
been before,
whatever,
it's the
I'm
following Saturday
flexible,
would be-
so,
It's July 25th, right?
yeah.
So what the following Saturday is?
August.
August.
7 more days.
August 2nd.
August 2nd, yeah.
So we could build that into the
Okay.
motion.
Okay, so do we have a motion?
Move that the Board of Selectmen approve the request of Susan Park to use the town common for a group fitness boot camp class on Saturday, July 25th or August 2nd, rain date from 9 to 10 a.m.
Maybe August 1st.
August 1st, whatever, the following Saturday.
So we have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, and you're aware of all of the trash pickup situations
Yes,
and the parking, where to park and...
So for parking, I mean, I do runs down there. I'm actually doing the road race. I'm doing the 10K, but I usually park, I think it's on Osgood.
There's no need for that.
Hey, I don't know who said that that's a flat route, but let me tell you, I pushed my daughter in the stroller a couple weeks ago, and that is not flat. So I usually park in that lot either on Chestnut Street or along the street. I think it's Osgood Street. Are those both fine, or?
Yep.
Okay.
It's a marked parking is
Okay.
fine. And then there's also additional spots in front of the, what we used to call the hay scales, and there's
Yeah.
also behind Kyle's Rock, there's spots there.
Okay,
So,
okay.
But yeah, you should have plenty of parking, and by the youth center too.
Okay.
So. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye, have fun.
Okay, thank you. Okay, St. Michael's Parish would like permission to use the town common on September 13th, I believe for their annual picnic, on Sunday, September 13th, 2015, from 12 to 4. Do we have anybody from St. Michael's in? Okay, do we have, I think all the paperwork was in order. Do we have a motion?
I'll move approval. It's a great event, and I think I can speak for the parish. It's open to everybody. You don't have to be a member of St. Michael's to come and join the fun. So.
Okay, we have a second, Mr. Stewart. Any other comments, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Joseph Contrada is requesting once again this year to use the town common for St. Vincent de Paul Friends of the Poor Walk on Saturday, September 26, 2015, from 9 to 12. Anybody here tonight to discuss that?
Move that the Board of Selectmen approve the request from Joseph Contrada to use the town common for St. Vincent de Paul Friends of the Poor Walk, Saturday, September 26, 9 to 12.
We have a motion, do we have a second? We have a second. All those any discussion?
Good luck.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Another good cause. We have a donation that was made to the North Andover Fire Department from Edward Dargan for $25. Do we have anyone here to speak to that?
I would
Okay.
move approval.
Second?
Mr. Dargan's a lovely man, former state trooper, and very nice of him to do this.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay. Okay, next we have a number of requests from Columbia Gas to provide, install new service for 4 different residents. Do we have anybody from Columbia Gas to speak to this? There's quite a bit of information in the package on these installations. Mr. Manager, anything to say on these?
Yeah, as we talked about at previous meetings, you provided me the authority to approve service level or emergency installations of gas, but in cases where it went beyond the sort of a local service level and went to larger installs, those would come back to the board, which is required under statute. So all the paperwork seems to be in place, but certainly provided those to the board to approve.
Okay. So do we take these one at a time, or do we want to take all 4?
Whatever your pleasure.
Anybody want to talk to him in the audience?
Move that the Board of Selectmen approve the request of Columbia Gas of Massachusetts to excavate 445 Wood Lane, 474 Waverly Road, 11 Margate Road, and 217 Brentwood Circle to install new gas service as presented.
Okay, we have a motion.
I have a quick question, though. Isn't Waverly Road already done?
This is one house, right? So
Yeah.
it's-
They probably have oil heat, and they want to bring in like a gas stove or...
Right, but I think it's already done. I mean, they had a detail out there the other day.
Oh, I see what you mean. It really is done.
Particular section of Waverly?
So this one house is what you're
That
saying?
house. It was right up to the house, you could tell. We were right up to the house.
Is the work already done, you're asking?
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking?
That's what I'm asking.
I don't know if the work's already done.
It might be.
Maybe it's
Might be.
piped
So
but not
we're-
turned
Work in
on.
advance of the request.
They may have.
So we're granting,
I'm just saying, when I read, and then I was like, huh, I drove by there last week, and there was a detail, and,
Maybe they didn't turn the spigot on yet.
yeah. But I don't believe they were, there was a detail out there, and they were in the street, but I don't believe they necessarily would, in the street working, it was all dug up to the house already,
So
though.
they've done the lateral to the house, but not
okay,
connected
on
into
the
the main.
private, they did the work on
That
the
could make
private
Right,
property, that makes
so
sense.
they did the work, they weren't out in the street, but there was a detail.
will
So
be.
if they were just doing the house and getting that ready, in anticipation, Well, then they use details and stuff, so that's good.
They only need the selectmen's approval into the roadway. That's what
Yeah,
we're approving.
so it had to have been the house part. But they were very, Waverly's really busy in the morning in particular, and they were like way over, they were very respectful, and
So, yeah, so they most likely were working on the private property then.
they still had a detail, so.
So we have a motion, and we have a second. Do we have a second? I know Tracy made the motion, Rosemary made the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay, great. The next, we have an amendment that we've been working on to the host agreement for the Greater Lawrence Sanitary District, with respect to the fact that they are looking to install some additional equipment for doing digesters. So we went through and drafted some amendments to the host agreement. We had a chance to review those, and they went in front of our attorneys, and I believe the GLSD attorneys as well.
Yes.
And so now they're in front of us for final ratification. So, any questions or comments?
I see it has 10 trucks on there. How do we come to that total?
That's 12. 12, right?
It is
12.
Yeah, 12 was the number that we had discussed as the maximum number of trucks that we'd want in a day coming to this facility.
So the,
It is per day, not like they can
Per
just
day, right.
lump them all on one day and you have 140, whatever. I said that wrong,
Right,
but,
they have to run, no, you didn't say that wrong.
no,
84, no.
84, no, I did say it wrong. I did 12 times 12, and as soon as it came out of my mouth, I knew that was wrong. It's only 7 days in the
The
week.
balance on this project is that the Greater Lawrence Sanitary District has an interest of adding the processing of pre-processed food waste, what they call PSSO. And that project is likely, I think it's fair to say likely to move forward. So the balance, in fairness, was to, as they did the preliminary design, they made a determination as to the amount or quantity or volume of material they would need to make this particular facility viable. We worked within the framework of what made that viable to put provisions in that were in the town's interests. So if you had picked a number significantly below the existing proposed number, then that would make the project not viable. And from, that may sound good, except there's a question of whether or not the GLSD requires an amendment to the host agreement. So this is what I would call a friendly amendment, discussed by parties to the mutual interest of both groups. Maybe not ideal for both groups, quite frankly, but to the mutual interest of both groups, so that they can proceed with their project, and the town receives some consideration for that to respect the impact on the community. It's a balance, it's in fairness, but I think it's an appropriate balance, and it identifies, in fact, our attorneys made sort of a subtle correction. They converted 12 trucks per day to 24 trips, one way in, one way out. So there wouldn't be any confusion about that, because the truck has to come in and out. These are the things that lawyers sometimes locate.
You just don't want them parking overnight, you mean?
Right. And so it represents, again, what I would refer to as a friendly amendment to the existing host agreement, where the community receives a reasonable level of concessions and consideration when the GLSD proceeds with installing the additional anaerobic digester and starts processing the PSSOs.
This is still a pilot program.
No, they're likely to proceed. The pilot will be contained within the larger program. It will not be sort of pilot, then wait. The pilot will be a subset, a phase into a larger project. It won't be pilot, wait, full project. What the GLSD is likely to prove in the next month will be the full project, of which the pilot is the first phase of that.
But the number of trucks would never exceed
Never
12.
change, right.
And
The pilot number of
with
trucks will be
respect to-
4, as an example.
like, to me, the definition of a pilot is they're going to try it, and if it doesn't work, they're going to stop it. But it sounds like they're making a significant investment here in new facilities, so a pilot is really, I think, the wrong term to use for it. Not that, I know we've been using it, I'm not saying you
No.
used the wrong term, but
the right term.
it is the right term, pilot?
Well, it's
It's a term that
right.
we've been using, but I'm.
When they came here, when they came here in the fall, they indicated that they wanted to make you aware of a pilot. When they came back in February, what changed was they went from $500,000 in funding from the state to $5 million in funding from the state. It indicated that the pilot would no longer be a standalone, let's see what it looks like, and then proceed. This is what the February meeting was in essence consultants about. They said they were proceeding with the full-blown project, but the pilot would be the first phase of that. I would view the pilot now, and Ms. Cousins did communicate that, I thought fairly clearly, that what I would view the pilot as is a way of tweaking around the margins rather than a yes or no to the project. And the pilot itself will have 4 to 5 trucks, and this really represents an amendment to reflect what is expected to be what I would call the full project. But she came in February. That's why I in fact asked her to come back, was because what significantly changed from the November-October meeting was the pilot, as we knew it, was changing into the full project because of the level of funding.
Yeah, and I remember in February, they really...
That's a lot of money to just say, well, it didn't work.
Right, no, and I think they were clear about that, too, that it was, like, the idea of a pilot was really no longer, a pilot that we could, at one point, say, we're not going to do this anymore because it's not working. It was more like a pilot to build up to the full service of the facility.
I also understood it to be that regardless of what the town of North Andover's opinion is, that it was, the decision is amongst this consortium. We're just one vote. I mean, it is what it is. But at least they're working with us.
Right.
And I brought forth a few suggestions, and as well as the people, and so far that they've really been pretty good about.
I think a lot of the items in this amendment were both from the board and from the consultants that we hired, or actually they ended up paying for, right?
Yes.
And these were all items that were on their list, including
Some other items added by the board as well.
including the money to restore any roadway damage or anything.
Wheel wash.
And wheel wash, that's in there too, yeah.
So this still would require the board, the commissioners of the GLSD to approve. I'm the signatory on it, but what I'm asking the board is the authority to sign it. I do recommend we do sign it. It still would require the GLSD commissioners to approve it, and then ultimately the chief executives of the 3 other primary district partners to execute the document as well. We don't have unilateral authority to make the amendment happen. The first document was signed by my predecessor, the mayor of Lawrence, the mayor of the town manager in Andover, and the mayor of Methuen.
So they're expecting a maximum of 12 trucks a day?
Yes.
Wouldn't it be easier for us to make a number of weekly trucks instead of 12 a day?
No, I would say this. I'd rather not negotiate it, but I would say that has its own limitations.
If the 13th truck shows up, you can send them home.
No, I think that one, there's a...
They're scheduled.
Right.
These are going to be scheduled trips in.
And because the offloading actually takes longer.
Well, yeah, well,
When we met with them, Don, too, I mean, she'd explained the logistics of trying to get each truck in there, and the routes that they would take. I mean, they seem like they're pretty, I mean, even just by virtue of this agreement, they're willing to work with us and be cooperative.
Yeah, I don't think the weekly number is really the way we want to go, because you
Right,
could end
because
up with them all at once.
They could front load them. They could, say, bring in 18 trucks on Monday or something like that. So I think the 12 trips in and out a day is appropriate.
It should be noted that full operation of the facility, even if approved, would not be till 2018. So the pilot will be really what we're talking about in 16 into 17. And that full operation under a full, an added digester and 12 trucks, that concept wouldn't begin at its earliest until mid-2018. By that time, we will have sort of seen, it's a little bit of a rolling start.
So we're looking for a motion to approve this and give Mr. Mailer authority to go ahead and sign this on behalf of the town as the representative of the town.
Mr. Chair, move that the Board of Selectmen approve the amendment to the host agreement with the Greater Lawrence Sanitary District.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to appointments. We have a number of appointments to take on tonight. So let's take them one at a time. We won't read all of the Board of Selectmen and Town Manager appointments, but I'd like to recognize the other folks that are joining in. Some of them special counsel, we don't recognize those. Okay, let's take them one at a time, though, I think is appropriate. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, motion to reappoint the names as listed in the agenda. That'd be the appropriate way of presenting it. For the terms as indicated in the agenda.
Okay, so these are a number of appointments for both from the town manager and the board of selectmen.
If you are so given it.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. And this is quite a list of people, and thank you all who take the time to serve the town in these various capacities. It's really amazing the number of people that we have that step up to roles in this town. Okay, next we have reappointment of our town council. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Okay, we have an appointment for special counsel, Kopelman and Page. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and finally, another special counsel appointment, Collins, Lochran, and Peliquin. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, can I just ask why do we have two special counsels? Are they?
Yeah, we can have an unlimited number of special counsels, and typically they have a specialty. So Collins, Loughlin, and Peliquin are our labor counsel primarily for public safety and bargaining. Kopelman and Page is a firm that has a wide range of experience, so we'll use Tom Herbalist for a lot of the land use permits. But if we get into certain other human resources related legal issues that are not specific, for instance, to bargaining with unions, then we often use Kopelman and Page. So communities will have multiple special counsels. The first is always called town council, and everyone under that is special. And those specials relate to specialties or using them for specific items.
Okay.
Yep.
And it's a pay-as-you-go type of situation?
Absolutely. All of them are pay-as-use.
Pay-as-you-use.
Year-to-date, legal counsel expenditures are $60,000 through the month of May.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for special counsel Collins, Lochran, and Peliquin. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We have no motion for parking clerk?
Yeah, that was the one I was
negotiate
thinking about.
salary?
Yes.
Sure she wants it? That's the one I meant.
This is the French Foreign Legion approach to parking clerk.
Move that the Board of Selectmen appoint Lori Burzlaff as interim parking clerk effective immediately.
I'll second that.
We have a motion second. Can I just ask what the duties of the parking clerk are?
Oh.
This is where she listens to
Parking
people
complaint.
plead.
This is all complaints, he says no.
Okay, omnibus person?
It means busy during, right after snow starts, right after the celebration. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
This is all the right balance.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, next we have an appointment to the Greater Lawrence Sanitary District. We are looking to appoint Bill Gordon, a former selectman. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let me say thank you, Mr. Mailer, for serving for the last 30 months.
30 months, yes.
On the board. It was an interim appointment that you took on for 30 months, and we thank you for the work that you've done there and the efforts that you put in there.
I think Bill would be great.
I think Bill will be great as well. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
We're going to keep him around whether he likes it or not.
We only put them on the best committees.
Okay, next we have an appointment to Veteran Service Director Ed Mitchell. Do we have a motion?
I'm really happy to hear that.
I'm
Yeah.
thrilled.
Yeah, we're not.
Yeah,
this is-
I understand.
Got it.
I moved.
Yes.
Second?
Okay, Rosemary moves it, Tracy second. Any comment? We're all very happy that Ed's coming back. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next, on consent, we have a request to change the abatement rate for senior property tax work-off program, and really this is putting it in line with the minimum wage for the state of Massachusetts. So it's going from $7.25 an hour to $9 an hour, I think it was.
This will allow the seniors in the program, I think average is around 35, to work the same number of hours but receive a higher rate per hour, which will be applied to their tax bill. So they'll be able to work the same hours that they currently work. They provide an invaluable service to the community, but they'll receive a bigger credit on their tax bills.
Wonderful.
Do we have a motion?
Move that the Board of Selectmen approve the request of the Human Resources Director to raise the abatement rate for the senior property tax work-off program to $9 per hour.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
So how much is this going, how much money are we saving seniors?
It's actually in the attachment. It goes from...
562.
If you had a hard copy of your packet, it would be
810,
right
because it's
at
90, it's
right in
90
my
hours
packet
a
and
year.
So I'm at the maximum yet. It says what the property tax abatement is based on $7.25 per hour, so.
No, it's both in the letter. Yeah, but
It's 810.
Okay.
It'll go up to 810.
Okay.
91 hours times 9.
max.
Okay.
That's a big chunk, though.
It's good, yep.
I wish we'd do more.
We will consider doing more in the future. I support that.
Yes, I-
The maximum is 1,000, and I think in the future we can recommend this. Yeah, I think that'd be good.
Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, we are moving into licensing. Do I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're now on licensing.
We're now in licensing, so first thing on today's licensing agenda is Smolak Farms requesting a one-day all-alcohol license for Christina Chan and Frank Chung for a wedding on July 11th. Everything is in order, and fees have been paid, and it's gone through all departments. No, she's not. Second? Do I have a second for that?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Have a nice wedding.
You sound so sincere.
No, they're not here, but in case they're watching, I hope you have a great day.
Love and laughter.
Okay, Smolak Farm also requests some one-day all-alcohol licenses for their Whim Dinner Series as follows. July 8th, 15th, 22nd, 29th, August 2nd, 12th, 19th. It's the same event that they have held for, I think, the last 2 years. Everything is in order, and it's gone through all departments.
I've heard really good things, too.
I've heard great things about it.
Anybody ever come back to us on the noise stuff? That's all
Yep.
gone, right?
Do I have all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. VFW is looking for their one-day wine and malt license for the Town Common events on Friday the 3rd from 5 to 10 p.m. and Saturday, July 4th from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m.
So moved.
Do I have a second? All those in favor? Aye.
Let's make an amendment to 7 a.m.
Oh, that's actually, they're in the room.
Yeah. Do you guys wanna come up and-
Do you want to come up and, you know, the road race on Saturday morning, it's true. Do you want to open earlier than 9 or, well, no, the runners come in at like 9.
I was kidding, but that's...
You were kidding, but it's true though.
Most of them want
I don't
beer.
mind, I just drink.
Me too.
They want a carve
So is
Say,
9
they're not
early
gonna go
enough
open a
then?
beer before the
Yeah,
run.
yeah,
they
but
don't
based on
run-
past
they don't drink
experience,
before they run, right?
yeah, 9 a.m. is plenty of time. They start trickling around maybe 9:15, 9:30 or so. There's just one more thing I'd like to add about this year's event for the beer tent. We have a close personal friend of several members of the board of directors and the daughter of a deceased member. She's currently battling breast cancer. So this year, our staff will be wearing pink T-shirts for breast cancer awareness. At the same time, we'll be having donation jars out. Our banners for the public signs will be that we hang on our fence. We'll have breast cancer awareness insignia on it, and we're hoping to really bring some people in and raise some money for this woman so she can, you know, go through her battle as comfortably as she can financially, and not have to worry about that part of it. So.
Awesome.
So
Still
that's,
our heroes. Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
and then what we're hoping for possibly going forward is each year we'll select a different charity
That's awesome.
and you know, donate some of the proceeds to those charities as well, so.
That's great. Wonderful.
Move approval if I didn't already.
We already did.
Good, yeah.
We're all good.
Already approved.
You're all approved.
Thank you for coming in tonight.
Thank you for
We do
coming
the
in.
after, we do the
We just want to
Great.
do it twice.
Do I have a motion to close the meeting of the North Andover? Do I have a second? All those in favor? Aye, we are now out of licensing and into
Okay.
a public hearing.
So, do I have a motion to open a public hearing?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we have some representatives from National Grid tonight
Flying right through.
to present. Want to come on up?
Next victim.
No, we're not all-
Nice.
Yep. Come on
hold
right
it-
up.
we can hold the
Just
check
introduce
back up.
yourself and,
My name is Michael Unitas, engineer representing National Grid. For 2 poles on the east side of First Street to support Pole 525, excuse me, the 2 poles will be on the west side to support a pole on the east side of West Street. That pole on the west side has some burley cables running behind the buildings there and starting to lean, so we need some support guys on the other side of the street.
So it won't be hooked up to any wires, it's just a support pole?
Yeah, it's just guy wire, it's just tension wire. There's no electricity.
Oh,
So it's just an additional pole across the street, and then the wires will run across the street to provide?
Right, it's two additional poles.
Are these individual, Andrew, like, is this a public hearing, open, close, open, close, open, close? I don't know.
We have to discuss them all first, then close and vote on, right?
But we'll take them all together as in the public hearing, and then we'll close the public hearing, we'll make the motions one at a time following that.
Thank you.
And we'll also hear from any abutters that may want to speak on each individual item. Actually, we'll wait till the end, and then we'll have any abutters speak.
I don't know what I missed.
Okay, so in the past, we've discussed these with the, the additional poles being added and maybe a different way of truing up the pole that's actually leaning. Is there any possibility that that pole can be trued up without adding an additional pole with another guide wire?
I mean, the only other option that we see is putting a pole that we would lean up against that pole.
Like a support pole?
Yeah, kind of brace that pole.
I don't know which one is uglier.
There's really no other way to true them up. I mean, it's just there's some heavy cable running down that driveway.
I can't even tell where we are.
To visualize this, these aren't poles. Are these poles that are going right up against the existing pole, or they're going across the street from the existing pole?
They're
so
going.
we couldn't remove it.
They're going across the street from the existing pole with a tension wire.
So we're not talking about a situation where there's the unsightly 2 poles, one screwed to the other. These are
these are 2 brand new poles across the street.
Okay.
So additional poles and wire.
So two poles to secure the one pole across the street.
Why don't we just fix the one pole?
Yeah, why don't we do that?
Well, I
Put
mean,
a bigger pole in.
Even with a bigger pole, it's the size of the wire that's running down that driveway is just so big. Doesn't matter what kind of wire, what kind of pole we put in there. It's eventually just going to start leaning towards the street.
So,
I mean,
why is there so much Waverly on here? I don't. Where is this?
Can you kick on the overhead screen? My battery's running out. We'll see if I can pick this up too.
Or just the owner, what if it's an absentee owner?
Okay, well,
And how do you like it?
I don't like any pole to that side of the street, obviously. I mean,
But we'll get to
the original one had a single pole.
Sorry.
Yeah, we'll get to you. Let's go. We're definitely going to have an opportunity for public comment on this, so we'll give it to you.
So it appears, and I may have the orientation wrong, but this appears to be on the back side of the Messina Plaza where the cross J is, in the middle of the screen where the 2 arrows are coming in. Mm-hmm. That cross J indicates the existing pole, right?
yes.
And the 2 J's without crosses through them represent new poles.
Correct.
Up at the top of the screen.
I don't know where we are.
So this is the back side of Messina's, where it says 109 Main?
What's 0 First Street, elderly housing?
Yeah,
Yes.
that looks like it's big
Correct.
way.
Yep.
Oh, gosh.
And so the
this is
poles run
terrible.
across toward what is the dentist office in general direction, up top,
That far down?
in general direction.
Okay,
J, that's up there.
got it.
Okay, and then the second new pole is here, and those are guying this particular pole that is existing.
How does this well,
How long has the current pole P525? How long has that been there?
I believe that has been there for a while, but I also believe there's it didn't have as much cable traffic as it does
What's
now.
been added to it, and how recently?
I don't know. It's not electric that's been added. It's there's telephone wires, cable wires, fiber optic, all sorts of different.
But no idea of when these things have been added?
I don't know.
I'm just trying to see what the sudden urgency, not that they've said that there's an urgency, but what
it's not-
reason are we doing this right now?
I mean, we do a lot of assessments on different circuits, different feeders. This is just one of the items that came up.
Could we consider putting in a bigger pole that would actually support the weight that's there, instead of adding these 2 additional poles on opposite sides of the street and the guide wires?
Diagonal.
Could we, and we've asked this before, you weren't the particular representative that was here, but we've had the same situation on, I think it was on Green Street, right? Where there was a pole that was leaning, and instead of adding guiding poles like this, we've asked to have a larger pole or some way of, go back and rethink it and think about how we can do it so we're not adding so much more infrastructure and poles down in that area.
And over all these driveways, and I don't know, I don't like it at all.
We're trying to lessen the number of telephone poles in town, not just add ones for support. How old is the existing pole?
I think the original pole was done in the 70s.
Doesn't it seem like it's time for a new pole?
Well,
A
we
bigger
could
and
put-
stronger one that's maybe put in down deeper so that the neighbors don't have poles all over the place?
We can explore it, but, if it does start to lean again, then we're back to,
The issue is that now you're adding, when you're going down First Street, there's a couple of poles on the left-hand side if you're coming off of Main. Now you're gonna have additional poles on the right-hand side.
That are only, they're only there for support.
No, I don't like it at all.
Oh, to be honest, I've sat in the audience and watched this conversation happen. This is my second time sitting on the board and seeing this conversation happen, and I feel bad because it wasn't ever with you. But I feel bad for you. Well, I feel bad for you. I mean, your managers did you a great disservice because these are the same questions we have every time.
Right.
And it's the same conversation we have every time. And even the basic questions of what's been added to this poll, like in the past, like what's been added to the poll that's requiring this action to be taken and when it's been added. I mean, that's a basic question.
Right, I understand that, but we also don't get notifications from other utilities when they're adding things to the pole. They have ownership of those poles as well. So if they're going to add wires to them, they don't notify us. As long as the pole is proper height, they can add whatever they want to them.
So you said this was observed just through a routine audit of what condition your poles were in then?
Right. I mean, we do audits of conditions of poles. We have feeders that we just patrol, and this was just one of the items that came up.
And by how much is there too much on this pole right now?
It's not that there's too much. It's just getting heavy.
Well, there must be too much because we have to now take action, right? So
right. So I don't have weight calculations.
I just feel bad because we're thinking of that street. There's been a lot of changes in that neighborhood relatively recently with the addition of new building structures, and I just think adding not just one wire to cross the street, but 2 wires, 2 poles. I mean, you can imagine. I mean, it's not the busiest street, but for any of the neighbors that live over there, it's not the busiest, right?
No, but it's busy.
But it still doesn't. I mean, it doesn't help. Yeah.
Right. The original plan was to add 1 pole across the street, but that pole would have been right in front of number 37, and I believe he is here, and spoke on that last time.
It would have also killed that big oak tree. They would have to cut the oak tree as a shade tree again. That's why I
on that
deal
street.
with Pat Higgins on it, and that's a shade tree that's covered under this piano. But that cabling that you're asking those questions, that cabling was added. You just use your name.
We'll take public comment now, but if you could just state your name for the record, that would be great.
David Burrell.
David Burrell. Okay. 37 First Street.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But the question you were asking, I could probably answer. They were adding all those cables when they put it
Go up to the microphone here so we can get you on TV too and on. Might as well do it all, David. Get it.
Okay. The cables that were added because they put additional poles behind the building, the new mall, and that weighted those cables because they put a pole behind the building too, and they added cables going to that, and that's sucking it in that way, and the new cables going down First Street is pulling it in that way. That's where all the strain is coming from. You can see it if you look at it.
As well, that because of the addition of, it looks like S&S poles. So the addition of those poles are what the primary reason why you're concerned. Is there any idea of when those 2 poles were added?
No, I don't know.
So is there any way that, if this is behind, if I'm understanding you correctly, it's behind the mall?
No, that's the pole that's there. The original pole was there, had light traffic on it. What they did is when they built the new plaza, they added another pole on the street behind the mall.
Can we put the screen back up? I'm sorry, my fault.
Behind the mall that added a big layer of cables. It's actually, if you look at the pole behind the mall, that's leaning in.
But that's what I'm saying. Can you add other support poles or shorten the span behind the wall where
I
it
mean,
would...
why are those two actually so close, and then there's that long...
That's what I
That's
mean.
right.
Shorten the span
Shorten the span of what, the existing poles?
of what he's describing. Unless I'm not
Those two are,
understanding,
like, right next to each
so that
other?
we don't have them in front of other people's property, that they be in the back.
You had mentioned that this was one option, and that another option, I think when you first came, we were primed to have a conversation about double poles, because that's been the history of these conversations, at least recently.
Right.
And you had mentioned at one point, perhaps an option as opposed to having wires cross the street with these two other poles, there being a supporting pole over there, which looks like it would be in the back of the parking lot.
Like this, a leaner.
Right.
Yeah,
You have a pole and another pole leaning against it.
I mean, I would almost think if action needs to be taken, that would be preferable to having two poles across the street.
That's what I was saying.
With wires crossing the street. I would think that would be
Or
preferable
shorten
for
the
you,
span.
right? But I'm throwing that out there. I mean, if you feel, we have to defer to your expertise because we're not. I mean, we have our aesthetic opinion, our opinions about aesthetics, but
I understand.
if there's a safety concern there, are there other options that address the safety, but while maintaining at least as closely as we can the current layout of the street without impacting neighbors?
Can we put it in deeper? Can we put a bigger pole to keep the single pole there? Is there a way? I mean, I had my old demonstration the last time to put the pole in deeper so it stays up, so it gives a little more support.
Right, I mean, we can do that, but I just don't know, I don't know if that's just gonna fix the problem or if it's just gonna delay.
What about metal pole?
I don't know.
The metal poles are strictly for support. We can't string wires on those. Like, not electric wires.
Well, I don't think that we want anyone in that particular area to lose electricity or what have you, but I think we're pretty clear that we're not thrilled with this idea.
Do you have a layout of any other options? I mean, I know that you described the option of a support pole.
No, I don't.
And are those the only two options, a support pole and these two that add?
I mean, off the top of my head, that's.
Well, if we were to consider a support pole, it would be, you would lose those two J cables and you would just have a single pole supporting P525.
Yeah, it would almost look like the source of that pole would be, if you're looking where, well, on our map, right the numbers currently are, the numbers on the map, P525. I mean, that would be where you'd be talking about putting a second pole and supporting the existing one so it's not pulled into the parking lot.
It would be basically in line with the wires going to the two S poles.
That was brought up, by the way, an approach to the owners of the mall, and they said no, because it would be on their property. The owners of Messina's, at the mall, because they approached them about putting a brace pole in, and I believe they said no, not on our property, so. I know, because I've been pursuing this, I've been dealing with the town engineers and everybody pursuing this, and I asked all those questions myself. Because I really don't want the poles across the street either. The original one was going to go right up against the tree, and then they changed it to this to accommodate me, but, I don't, and by the way, it said only for stringing, but if you read the actual print, it says, in the future, be allowed to put crossbars and wires on those poles. It's written right into the language. So it's not just strictly for guy wires. And by the way, there is also a guy wire currently anchored into the tree for that pole now. It actually is attached to the tree. That's existing, that's currently existing.
Down here while it's still light, so I can take a peek.
I know. Well, they've already attached a guy wire to
So
the tree.
I guess we'd ask,
This isn't new.
it sounds like, we're not real thrilled with the current proposal. I guess we'd ask if there's an opportunity to go back and rethink this a little bit. Maybe come back with another idea that would be, more suitable to everybody, whether it be a bigger pole or if you can get permission, work with the neighbors there to get, or the property owners to get permission. So I think that's where we're heading, right? We're heading down that path right now that we're probably not going to get approval for this. We can always take it up if you'd like, but I think we'd like to see some other options. And this is not unprecedented. We've done this before, and like Selectman DeCalgero said, kind of like threw you in the fire here because we've had this exact conversation probably less than 2 months ago.
I'm pretty sure they were laughing at you when they left.
So, Okay, why don't we move forward then with the other two? Oh, we got a different person. Thank you.
That's okay, yeah, I told him I was amenable at one time to the new polls. I never liked it, but I thought I'd have to agree to something, so. But
Well, we're going to have to do something, but it's not going to be current form.
thank you.
My name's Chris Wellington. I'm with National Grid. I'm a program manager for the installation and replacement of cables that are getting towards end of life for underground residential developments. And the one I'm speaking to tonight is Hay Meadow, Sawmill, and Deer Meadow. So there's an existing URD, or underground residential development. Our primary cable is getting towards its end of life. We've had faults out there, so it's time to do something about that. So we've presented a plan to the town to replace the cable with a cable and conduit system, and pretty much it follows over what's existing out there. Most of the plan is in the public right-of-way. We try to stay off edge of curb and follow the existing utility easement and replace what's out there. It's underground, yes.
So we really, there's no new cables being run. It's really just replacing. So it's really just, really what you're looking for is an ability to open up the roadway, do the work, and.
I mean, there will be some road crossings, there may be driveway crossings, be running down the side of a road, so there may be some lawns to replace or repair.
That's maybe. So it's basically,
Well, we're not going to do them all. I mean, I'm not going to hit every driveway, but there will be some driveways that will be affected. There's some driveways that won't be affected.
Driveway crossing, repave the whole driveway, right?
No, we do not.
no.
With a try.
It was worth a try. It was a try. But what we will typically do, a trench is about 1 foot wide, but we're not going to leave you with a 1 foot wide trench across your driveway. We'll start at the furthest edge up the driveway and pave out so it becomes like an apron, and then we'll fix the seam and we pave it. When you cross the road, we have methods for it. We dig the trench, we go in, we repave, we use certain soils, and then we will grind and backlay 1 foot on each side of the trench. I mean, that's typical construction standards that we use. We presented it to Patrick Higgins. We talked about him. We talked about the placements of utilities that are pre-existing out there, just to allow for room for your concerns and ours. And this is pretty much the plan that we've come up with, and we present it tonight for public comment and for your approval.
I'm never a fan of public utilities doing anything on private property or anything in the streets, in all honesty, because let's be honest, it looks like junk afterwards. It never looks as good, and it never lasts as long.
But we're not on private property. We're in the right-of-way.
But even in the right-of-way, it still never lasts as long. It sinks. It has to get done, and I understand that.
Right.
I get it. But I also understand why people are in the audience this evening.
I do too. And I respect their property and the town and the effect on it. If it could have been put in and it would have lasted 100 years, that's what we would have wanted. But at the time and the technology that was used, it isn't. And I mean, if we don't make the repairs, they're going to continue to have faults out there. So it needs to be done.
Can you explain, though, how come some's in the right-of-way, but then some is on folks' lawns? And
Sure. Well, their lawn, they don't own all of their lawn. I mean, the public right-of-way extends onto their lawn. So I respect the care that they take on having nice lawns, and we'll restore it as best we can. Some equipment is actually on private property, like a handhole or a transformer sets on the property. We come from the public right-of-way, and we enter into the handhole or the transformer from the public right-of-way, which is existing presently. So we'll have to replace that, and so that's what we do. And we have an easement to be able to do that and maintain the equipment. So that's all we're doing. We're not expanding our footprint in the area. We're just trying to do as minimal as possible for the trenching and upgrade the system.
Has there been a history of power outages in that
There
neighborhood?
has.
Okay. And there's no other way to address this, and this is the way to address it?
There is none, unless we did poles and wires, which we don't want to do that.
Don't go there.
No,
So, I mean,
just
we
to
don't-
clarify, it's a
No,
much
I
different
mean-
situation than First Street, I understand
Right,
that.
it's all underground.
So, I mean, it's what we want to do right by the people out there. We're going to continue. It's added expense to go with an underground system, but it's what we want to do.
Okay, so, yeah, anything else, Chris?
I'd rather a choppy driveway than a no
No electricity in the middle of it there. Okay.
Yeah. Or a bowl.
So I'm going to open it up to public comment. You look like we have a number of people here to comment on it. Why don't we take the people who are for it first? I guess. For.
I think they all are. Anybody not?
I'm actually for it.
No, but I think he's got the votes.
You have the votes. I mean, is anybody not for this getting done?
So come up to the, okay, let's take one at a time. If you wouldn't mind, come up to the podium and introduce yourself and your address.
Doug George, 137 Haymeadow Road. And he's right, the underground direct burial cable has failed, and it needs to be replaced. We've had way too many power outages, and it's long overdue to be done. Recently, we had Verizon come in and install FiOS, and they came through and they destroyed our lawns, and they said they're going to repair them, and they said they're going to replant the grass. And we have these nice rocks out there now, and they throw some grass seed, and they disappear, and it erodes, and it rains, and it doesn't get fixed. You've got a $10,000 bond on this. So that's a joke. I'd like to know who's the town liaison that's going to be watching this. So when Verizon came in, I had just finished patching my driveway because the original cable that was direct burial wasn't properly compacted and my driveway sank. So I cut out an 8-foot section and redid it. And then a year later, the cable failed on my driveway, and they came out and they dug it up and they said they'd patch it wider than a foot, and they'd come back in the spring and they'd overlay it again, and they never did. And I made 5 phone calls and I never got a response. And then Verizon comes through the next year and tears that same section up again and patches it. And now, you know, I've got the longest stretch. I go from Haymeadow to Deer Meadow. They're going to cut across 2 parts of my lawn. The good news is my house is under agreement, so it's not going to be my problem to fix. Except the bad news is there's a tree there that's part of the agreement that's probably worth $10,000 that you're going to be cutting the root base on, that I still own the tree. And if you're going to restore things, you're going to end up having to figure out a way to transplant that tree. So who's going to watch these people? There's, you know, people, we've repaired our lawns because there's been numerous underground failures. We've repaired our driveways because they've been dug up because of the cable failures. And it's never been done to the level of how we've cared for our properties in the past. And $10,000 bond. How many driveways are you going to fix for a $10,000 bond?
Is that a standard bond that is requested of the?
Yeah, I honestly can't address how the number came up.
No.
Usually, it's a percentage of the construction value of the contract.
Yeah,
Do you know what the construction value of this work is?
I don't have it off the top of my head, but I think it's around hundreds of thousands.
At least, yeah.
So a little over 1%, 1.25%. 1.25% low on a bond.
I hope that when they're done with all these road crossings, that you come out and you look at the street and you decide to grind and overlay our street because it's terrible. There's rocks sticking up through the pavement. It's like a washboard in areas. It hasn't been addressed properly. So we're in favor of it, but under the proper conditions and the proper oversight.
I think, and I think we can understand that. I mean, even myself, the last time the gas company came through, I got a new sidewalk, and I'm still battling from this community, the crabgrass that we used, you know. But I got a beautiful new sidewalk because the whole neighborhood got new sidewalks. You know, it's kind of torn up the street from gas, but my neighbors don't have any issues with their gas lines anymore. So sometimes you gotta, I don't think, I mean, and maybe I'm completely wrong, but I can't imagine that we're going to give them all new driveways and lawns. I mean, that's the reality. I don't know how we would ever enforce that.
No, I don't think right now we're requesting. I think there was a patch. Can I just ask you guys to keep any comments to the board? You know, yeah.
I was just giving you my cell phone number and said if you have any issues, please call me, and I would do the same for anybody else who's here. And there's a letter that goes out that's going to have my name on it, so when we get closer to the project, I'll have my cell phone number, and they can reach out to me, and I'll be glad to meet with you and do the best I can. Briefly, we talked about the tree. If we can reroute a conduit, if we can move it a little bit, just to try to keep it from affecting the tree, we will if we can. Those are the type of things we can do, within limitations. But I can't transplant a tree. I can't commit to that.
I can do that.
I can't commit to that. But when it comes to the grass portion, we'll come in, we'll put boom, and then we seed it. And what's unfortunate is it's really a joint effort between the homeowner and us, because we cannot go out and water people's lawns.
I was just going to say, you're not going to
Most of us have irrigation systems that you're going to be repairing,
And we will.
and we turn those on. But more importantly, rather than 65 neighbors having to call this guy, is there somebody in the town that we can call and say, hey, look, they're not doing their job? Who's the liaison?
I'm not going to like my answer. I think as it relates to public utility projects, it's just, I don't see that happen. I think the difficulty is then you're going to, it's not, from my experience, what towns do, because it's a public utility project. It's actually not a public works project. So the board gets to control and manage, to a certain extent, those conditions. And we certainly will call the same people, some of which have been in the room earlier tonight, but we won't have a project manager for this. We won't have a hotline. I mean, I'm trying to be direct. You can shrug your shoulders, but it's not a public project. We're holding a bond, which is a little bit unusual, and I do think the number's low, given the construction value you identified, and that's fair. But we don't assign public employees to public utility projects. We never have, and I've been in the business 30 years, regardless of the community. We do on public works projects. So
They're crossing the street.
understood.
You are responsible.
I'm not saying we wouldn't, I'm not saying we're not engaged and we won't work with you. I think if you're looking for us to take responsibility for their work, I'm going to be very direct. We're not going to take responsibility for their work. But we can do our best to continue the lines of communication, and I think some of us.
Notification before that bond is released.
Hold on, I'm sorry. When
Sure.
What he's saying is you can also email the board, and we have these guys in front of us all the time. And as you can see, there are cases, hold on, as you can see, there are cases where, we go back to former incidences, and we kind of use that as leverage to say, okay, you're looking for this, but you never finished this other project. So we use that as leverage. So you're certainly welcome to email the board and let us know what.
You have a bond as your leverage.
No, that's a different point, and that's a fair point.
If you solicit the neighbors and say, can we release the bond? Is your lawn, is your driveway restored? If you get a no answer, don't release it.
We understand how bonds work, and that's exactly how they work. The question right now is whether the value of the bond is sufficient, given on the cost of the contract.
How many driveways can you do for $10,000?
Well, remember, bonds are not full value of contracts. But hold on, stop, if I can. What I will do, and it's fairness, if the board gives me a discussion depending on how they feel, I will go back and evaluate the bond in the context of what we would truly hold in a subdivision bond, as an example, so that it's consistent. This is 1.25% of the cost of construction. For a paper bond, not counting cash is much lower. So I certainly am willing to look back to see what our traditional bond structure is and the idea of a conservation or subdivision bond under planning to make sure that the dollars are consistent. They shouldn't have a different standard. I think that's fair than others. And I can do that if the board provides the latitude to do that.
You always have the opportunity to come back to the board. You could even come to public comment where you don't even have to be on the agenda. It would be wise to be on the agenda so that we could come in with some facts and have them there. But public comment is exactly that. You can come and say, listen, I was here, blah, 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 and this is going on. That's always a citizen's right.
And I'm certainly saying, I'm not saying we won't answer the phone. I just don't want to, I don't want to delegate the authority of a utility to a municipality. We're going in the wrong direction in terms of resources. I just want to be clear that we'll answer. And if we have a bond, we certainly will use that bond the way it's intended.
That's the lever.
And for us, we have a working relationship with the town of North Andover. I mean, I'm in charge of dealing with probably over 50 towns and cities in the greater area of the Merrimack Valley and the North Shore. And the town has a tremendous amount of leverage, way beyond the value of the bond with us, because we have a relationship and we're going to be moving forward on other projects. And this is one of, I have 50 jobs on my desk.
I don't disagree, but when you dug up my driveway, there was no bond, and 5 phone calls got nothing done.
I don't know who you called, but I will say the program is just ramping up in the last year or two. And I have my cell phone, and you can call me.
I'll leave it for the new guy, but yeah.
Thank you. All right. I'm sorry, Phil, did you have a comment? All right, hold on,
No,
folks, I'm
we
gonna,
continue with public comment. I think it would be more
Okay.
appropriate at the end of.
so do we have, I'm sorry, Mr.
Do
Mullen?
you have another project to present if you wanted to?
Are we done with?
Well, I think we still have some public comment on this particular Meadow View.
On this
Hay Meadow.
project.
So, I'm sorry, do you have a comment?
I have a brand new driveway.
Can you come, you're gonna have to come up to the microphone and introduce yourself. And please address your comments to the board.
I'm Lisa Regal, 39 Hay Meadow Road, and I had a new driveway put in about a year and a half ago. I think I called Jason, it was when it first came out, wondering if they could go out into the street and around the driveway. And, well, that's what Verizon did, because we had just had the driveway put in.
Well, I would guess that depends on where the lines are currently.
Well, when they surveyed it with the, last year they came out, and the surveying company came out, the flags went right across my driveway in the pink.
And I'm sure they do, because that's typical of where it goes. I don't know how far the offset is, but we don't usually jog out around the driveway. If it's not a far way to go, maybe we'll do that. I can't commit that it's gonna happen. And we may end up cutting the driveway. To be honest with you, that may happen.
And when do you anticipate to do this job?
The work is lining up for next spring.
Next
This job
spring?
will be next spring, it's not gonna be.
So it's like 3 years since you started, right? We got notice, first notice, okay.
Well, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other new comments on this? We want to kind of keep it, okay, so you've been waiting, I know that, so come on up. I'm going to ask you to keep the comments somewhat, yeah, and if you could not reiterate same things that have already been said.
Well, it's only, but it's.
And again, your name and...
Jeff King, 153 Hay Meadow. I've been there 34 years since the development was done. And I like everything that was, Doug really brought it forward. He's my next door neighbor. But the bond, if the bond is sufficient enough, and I mean, you know, $5,000 I can pay with my credit card, but we need to put a bond in there that makes them, that gives them some impetus to get something better done. And I'm not saying, I'm sure you've got a lot of things going on, and there's a lot of this and that, and I understand you can't monitor it because there's no independent oversight committee or oversight company. We just need to know, because our streets look terrible. They made cuts across, and then they patched them, and then we never saw anybody again. And the lawns, well, you know, we deal with lawns, but it's just the overall. You go through in the place. It's like a bad road someplace out in the countryside where they never paved. That's what it's happened now. So it's well taken. Oh, and the last question I have related to it: who's paying for the cost of the new cable? The electric company. And how is that being done by the electric company? Are they going to again raise the cost of our electric bills in that neighborhood? No.
Well, all of us will pay for your lines.
So that $245,000 check that you guys got, that's coming back to us?
It didn't come to us, it's to the town.
It's to the
savings
town.
that the town has
Oh, by the way,
realized.
last question I have is, does the electric company, as do they pay taxes to be, to the town as well?
They pay
Property
personal
tax?
property tax.
They don't pay.
Depending on the asset.
I
Not
see.
on individual lines, but on.
No, but I'm on the real estate of their building and that kind of stuff.
National Grid on
National Grid on 114?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, you answered a lot. I appreciate it. I got your phone number, so that helped a lot. And anything we can do to...
And the manager already talked about
No,
taking a look at the bond again. And
Yeah, I mean,
we'll talk
we
about that.
appreciate everything that's being done by the town. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else on this particular project? I know you guys have been sitting here for a while. No? Okay. And then, Mr. Wellington, you said you have one more project to present?
Raleigh Tavern.
Raleigh Tavern.
Yeah, I know.
Raleigh Tavern's not even on here.
Yeah.
But we call it Raleigh Tavern, but it's Carlton Lane.
Carlton Lane.
Johnny Cake.
Oh, Johnny Cake, okay.
Very,
Thank you, guys.
My name is Peter Walsh. I'm from TRC, a consultant that works with National Grid. And pretty much the exact same thing that Chris said about the previous projects, about this one here at Carlton Lane, Johnny Cake. There's been numerous faults out there. We tried doing cable injection, which is our first priority, is to try to see if we can cure it with this cable injection, but it failed. It didn't work. So our only option really is for conduit and cable. We stayed where the existing utility is. We went inside that corridor. We met with Patrick for the town. We went over all the plans and everything. We added in the things about the shady tree law and so forth. So basically, that's what we stay. And we don't. It's not really that big of a project, but it still needs to be done for the reliability for the customers. So.
This doesn't look like there's a resident. Can I ask just a quick question? What has been, from a cost of construction perspective, what has been your experience with bonds in terms of percentage of cost of construction? I don't believe that we do a percentage. It's usually a $10,000 bond is what I've done on all the towns I've been to. Regardless if it's $100,000 or $2 million? Yikes. Okay. We'll explore that further, I guess.
Ray doesn't know that off the top of his head.
Has nothing to do with purchasing. I mean, we.
That's great. That's nice.
Yeah, but you know stuff like that.
Well, purchasing, we do a 5%.
She was throwing your softball.
I know.
I really was.
Purchasing, we do
You
a
bumped it.
5% of whatever. So, you know, for $800,000, it would have been a $40,000 bond.
Okay.
So I don't see any residents here for that, for this particular item, so I think we have no public comment for that. So obviously, they're less concerned than Haymeadow was. So,
Well, we really understand the concerns because we've heard this before, not only just here, but in other areas where the driveways and grass areas don't come back the way they are. And like Chris has said, we're going to do the best we can to make sure everything's fine. But obviously, grass, you know.
That has to be.
And the other thing too is, you know, as Chris mentioned, just because we're digging up someone's driveway, it's not where we're digging. It's really not their driveway. We're inside the easement, right? We're gonna do everything we can to make it right, but.
And we recognize that they pay for the driveway.
Yeah, they do. They pay for the irrigation systems and all that other stuff too. So.
Yeah. The property line isn't always what it seems. We understand that.
So while you're both here, I want to make you aware that there were a number of conditions that Patrick Higgins had put against it, and you were both in possession of the copies of those, and you can meet all those conditions.
Incorporated the drawings, and they've been resubmitted to Patrick.
Mr. Chairman, can I request you just give me latitude relative to the bond so I can do some exploration on your approval, and we may, depending upon what that research shows, the possibility of increasing the bond.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we have to vote on that, right?
No, I would move forward and give me the authority specifically under the bond piece to modify it if it seems appropriate to do that.
So when
We'll
do that when we come on a public hearing, we'll do that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so are we at this point ready to close the public hearing? Have anything else to say? Okay, so I'll have a motion to close the public hearing. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the public hearing is closed. Now we'll have a motion on each one of the petitions in front of us.
Move that the Board of Selectmen approve National Grid Poll Petition number 183, National Grid Poll Petition number 165544661, Hay Meadow, Sawmill Road, Deer Meadow, as presented.
We have a motion, do we have a second? We have a motion and a second.
So you're-
Discussion?
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry. So Tracy made the motion, Don seconded, and now it's open for discussion. Did you have a question?
So you know, you're going straight to B, right?
Yes, because we're not doing the First Street.
Okay.
So do we need to table that? We'll come back to that one. Let's come
I
back
just
to
didn't
that.
make any movement on that.
Okay.
Continue that.
All right, we'll come back and we'll continue that one. So right now we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Move that the Board of Selectmen approve National Grid Poll Petition number 168022435, Cotton Lane, Johnny Cake Street, as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion on this one?
Just with the latitude to modify the bond, if you could include that, I'm sorry. On both of these.
To
'cause they're
amend that
similar.
on both of these, to give town manager latitude to amend the bond if appropriate,
Thank you.
if he deems appropriate.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second? We already second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then we'll table the first one. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
No.
I was going to say, in regards to A, do you need a motion to table that? Do we just not do anything?
Just table it.
Do we need to continue it, or just?
You're out of the hearing from a continuation, but I think you can table the decision to the next meeting, or until they come back.
Okay.
I didn't know they appropriate.
So there's no actual
Table.
motion?
I would take a vote to table.
Okay. Move to table National Grid Poll Petition number 183799797, First Street as presented.
Motion, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, So, somewhat all set, 2/3 all set. And then we'll look for you guys to come back.
One comment that we were very, very pleased that the leaning pole of Middlesex Street has been fixed. And
That was Joe that presented the check.
yeah, I probably should have said it in front of him.
Relay the
It took a while, but I'll tell you, the homeowners were delighted. They just didn't know what happened. All of a sudden, it was fixed after years. So we appreciate the cooperation. It took us a little while, but we do appreciate the cooperation on that. And would you please send that message back to Joe, right?
It was already related.
Okay.
You wanted to make sure it was taken care of.
Great job. You're just confirming, though, you threw him under the bus then to come here and talk about the other stuff.
They sent the A-team, huh? No,
I appreciate it. Drive by it every morning, taking my son to school, and honestly, I was afraid every single day driving by. I'm
Every
afraid
storm,
of
I
it.
think that's coming down, and
I mean, it was
really
so
bad.
Thank you.
It was bad.
Okay, well, we're gonna move on, because we're hitting that senior member time limit. Anything, any old business to cover? Mr. Manager, anything old business?
Nothing I'm aware of.
Okay, any new business to cover?
Dan?
No, we're not there yet.
We're not there yet.
Okay. Okay, now this is, we're in our last meeting in June, so that means we need to go through a reorganization of our board.
Mr. Manager, Mr. Chairman, first I'd like to say thank you very much for all your hard work in being the chair. You did a fabulous job. I love some of the new things that you brought forward, particularly one of my favorite were the Pledge of Allegiance and so many other things, and it was great. You did a great job, and we really appreciate you taking the helm. And with that, I'd like to make a motion.
Spent a few dollars on it.
There you go.
There you go, thank you.
And for that, we're going to give you a nice yellow T-shirt.
Nice yellow
T-shirt too, and a ball.
We're not thirsty.
And with that, I'd like to make a motion I move that Tracy Watson be our new chairman of the board.
Second.
Motion and a second.
Oh, thank you both.
All those in favor?
Aye. I'd like to make another motion that Phil DeColigiero be our new clerk of the board.
Second.
We have a motion and a second from Mr. DeColigiero as clerk. All in favor?
Aye.
And my final motion is to have you yourself, Dick Valancourt, be the new chairman of licensing.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
There you
Well,
go.
I
Thank
think
you
we
all
have-
for serving. I didn't even ask any of you. Well, I did ask you.
Okay, and I will happily hand this over to you.
Oh.
But not yet, though.
I'm a
Not
little
yet.
vicious with it,
Not
so,
yet.
you know.
I'll give it to
Put it
you.
on the left side.
Yeah.
Tracy.
And let the games begin.
The left
Okay.
side, Tracy, not the
Yeah,
right
right
side.
now.
Let's keep pounding over there.
Okay.
Oh, my goodness.
So let's open
Thank
it up
you.
for public comment. And,
you go.
and also, yes, thank you all. And Rosemary, thank you for serving as clerk, and thank you for all the work you did as licensing commissioner for 2 years? Or 3 years? 3 years. Thank you for all that.
Yeah.
Some turbulent ones we had to go through in that
Little
time.
bit
But
here and there.
you managed
I
us
had a
through it
break in
very well.
between.
You managed us through it well, so thank you very much.
I'll get you to my right, it's all good, you know.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Mr.
Stan, we're
No,
co-opting.
I'm going to stay as long as you want, right? Stan Lippert, 43 Stonecleve Road. I just wanted to come and thank you, the board, the town manager, and Mr. Santilli, among others. There's a whole cast of characters that made possible our new wonderful school administration building. It was so great to go to the opening and just see that great facility that I know we're going to enjoy for years, for decades. We tried to go back and think if we can ever imagine a time when the school department, in anybody's memory, had its own special building for that, and we couldn't. We'd have to go back before the old high school. So, and as far as everybody knew, when the middle school was the old high school, that's where the administration was in those days. So, this is the first freestanding building we've had. It's in a wonderful location. Everything about it is just perfect.
It feels like a
It's great.
campus.
And we just imagine the travel stipends are going to shrink because they can walk to schools, right? Except the high school, maybe a little far. But it's just great, and I just wanted to express my appreciation as a school committee member for what a wonderful facility and all the great work that went on to give us what we've got. So we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
May I just say, relay a message that was asked of me, that some of the citizens of the area would love to take a quick tour of the building, that it wasn't open to the public as they saw it. They didn't get invitations, and they felt uncomfortable just going. So if there's a time and a place, a Saturday afternoon or something that...
We did have quite a few people.
I fully expect that starting 1 July with our new superintendent, that there will be several occasions, I have to believe, where the citizens of the town will be able to come and see the new facility and get to know her and other things, other fun things. She regularly put on backyard cookout at her high school, which is about half the size of our school district. She hosted that for the community, so I think she's that kind of person, and we may see some of that right away. So I wouldn't be a bit surprised. I think that would be a fun thing to do. I'll pass your suggestion along to her.
And Stan, along that line, Stan, is we had several dozen people come out to that opening, or to the open house the other night, and I just want to say how impressed I was to see Dr. Price go out of her way to attend that. Hopefully that's a sign of really good things to come.
You know, my impression is she's a real show-up kind of person. You know, so she'll be at a lot of functions, right? A lot of functions, even though she's not right around the corner. But I think you're going to see a lot of her going forward. So we appreciate it too.
Just so the board knows, the school department personnel will be moving in this week, and the facility will be open and operational next Monday, June 29th.
Okay. Thanks, Sam. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Town manager's report.
Does anybody have any questions?
No, you're going away.
You're going away.
We'll wait you get back.
I mean,
You're going away.
It's a far place. Well, you know, it's interesting. It came up as we were standing outside the building. We talked a little bit with a couple of folks, and I think it's important to recognize that a professional government and a municipal government should be considered a professional government. We'd like to think we are. Hopefully we act that way. But professional government requires professional spaces, right, where we meet people, interact with people. And I think the school administration is emblematic of that. We have a highly professional, skilled staff in the school department. And the fact of the matter is they now have the matching sort of quarters for them to interact with parents and other stakeholders. And that's important in any community. Our assets do reflect who we are. And as professional as we can be on a daily basis, it is important that folks recognize the need to put the professionals who work in government in spaces that make them excel. A fire station will be a great example. It'll match the skill of our fire department and staff with the building that represents not how horses were drawing equipment out of the building, but instead how modern fire apparatus works. So this is another example, and the cooperation and efforts by everybody to get it done. It's another step along a long path, but a very positive path, and we appreciate it.
Great. All good.
It's all good.
Okay.
4 minutes, guys.
Anything else? I saw, Mr. Calogero, I saw you attended an opiate forum the other night, and today there was some proposals made by our new governor.
Yes, actually, it was perhaps some good suggestions coming from the city of Salem. One of their city council subcommittees held a public health meeting that attracted over 100 people, and I have to say I wasn't the only person from outside of Salem, the city of Salem and Mass, to attend. I got to speak with representatives from the Gloucester city government, Peabody city government, Beverly city government, just about what the status of opiate addiction is in their community, but also, I mean, it's something that's applicable to many communities, you know, what they're trying to do to tackle it. So it definitely seems that we're not the only one overwhelmed with trying to address this. In fact, I know I'm meeting with the police chief as well as Lieutenant Folds on Friday morning, as well as with Rick Gorman, just to talk about, you know, what our community is doing. It seems like there's a lot of moving parts, and it'd be nice to get everybody in the same room to just figure out what is it that we're doing and where do we go from here. I know that our Board of Health has expressed a very strong interest in getting involved. In fact, I just got a phone call today from I believe the right title would be Chairman of the Merrimack Valley Substance Abuse and Prevention Project, Phil Leahy, asking about whether... Doing incredible work. Well, he's interested in doing a type of forum educating parents of young children, not parents of children who are battling addiction right now, but parents who ideally won't ever have to battle this, about doing some type of regional forum, but what the feasibility would be of having it in North Andover. And the great thing was he reached out to me, so I think that's, I mean, it's great that we have those type of community conversations happening. I don't know, I don't have anything to report, but it was a great.
Thanks for attending and thank you for practicing.
In the school department. Absolutely. No, I think that it's part of that team. Yeah, it's for right now. I think we have so many disconnected conversations, and the town manager's probably sick of hearing from me. Lori's probably sick of hearing from me, but I think I'm sure.
Lori gets her iced tea, she's good.
Indeed, right? Indeed, yeah. You're welcome, Ray, for that.
I'm watching out for you.
But I completely agree, because Stan, I feel like in these conversations, because it's not just in North Andover, it's what are other communities doing to address this, and reaching out to those communities. And I feel like the biggest, overwhelm is the best word. It's overwhelming because every
The entire state is overwhelmed by this, and if we don't start
So all of
regionalizing our
Northeast.
response, we're never
oh,
going
it's
to battle it.
my
The whole Northeast.
my.
That's right.
Around here, which is the building respectful communities and raise, right? We started that a number of years ago when we had some unexpected suicides in one of our schools. And people got very concerned about that problem as a specific problem, much like the opiate addiction problem. And they started that program. And the good thing about that program is we've been doing it consistently ever since. It wasn't just a one-shot deal. It wasn't 1 year. We've kept doing it over and over. And hopefully what you're doing, Mr. DeCologero, will fit into that same model, not just something we're going to talk about for 1 year, but we'll start talking about and keep talking about it forever to help people forever. So
I feel like actually this may then be an appropriate thing to, just by coincidence, I ran into Rick Gorman, who let me know that the launch for the Merrimack Valley's opiate abuse subcommittee. So right now our community is working with Andover, Lawrence, and Methuen in launching a project.
Omitted in that article, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to ask the town manager how come we were not listed in
I
that.
hope that was just an oversight, because it looks like we've been very much included in the, we're very much a part of it. In fact, Lori Howe seems to be the point person. She's a North Andover resident, actually right behind you, Don. So the Merrimack Valley's Massachusetts Opiate Abuse Prevention Collaborative launch date is at 8 a.m. on June 30th, which is next Tuesday, at the Northern Essex at Riverwalk Complex on Merrimack Street in Lawrence. Again, I got it from a friend of a friend, and I emailed today, and it sounds like it's something that, we would be, actually, I didn't even think of that, we would all be able to attend if we were so willing. So I'll forward that along to the board, or forward it to Lori, and Lori, you can get it out if you wouldn't mind to everybody. I'll forward it right now.
Mr. DeCologero, since you seem to be sort of taking the lead on this, BRC and RAISE might be a platform to look at for our schools to piggyback on, to add this new concern to that, because it's already in place and it's been working a long time and everybody's very aware of it. So it might be something to think about. Something, again, to talk to the new administration about. So just saying.
Well,
Thank you, Stan.
Any other comments, any parting comments before we close this out?
No, I thank you for a year well served.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
I
that.
hope I can fill your shoes for the
I'm
next.
sure you can. I have no doubt about that.
Will the new chairman be sitting at the center of the,
I might change it all up like Bill Gordon tried to do. Put himself on the end. Didn't work. Remember that? Didn't work.
So,
He was like on the end. It was weird. I don't like it.
So our next meeting is July 13th.
Mess it all
And I will no longer be presiding. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
For a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.